It would be interesting to some degree if this podcast turned into just us trying to fuck up each other's lives as much as possible.
We could make that a theme for a particular season or something. I mean, this time
it kind of seems like it's the theme for this season.
In 2017, Universal Studios announced the birth of a new shared universe of monster movies, bringing their classic horror icons into the contemporary franchise film landscape. But after the critical and financial failure of its first installment, the project was indefinitely abandoned. Now, in 2024, the powers that be have called upon one pulp horror devotee and one snarky film critic to unearth the concept. I'm Dylan Roth.
And I'm Dalton DeShane.
Are you afraid of the dark universe?
Welcome back to Are You Afraid of the Dark Universe, the podcast where we attempt to resurrect Universal Studios' failed cinematic universe of monster movies, one pitch at a time. I'm one of your hosts, Dylan Roth.
And I am the hunchbacked host, Dalton DeShane.
And together, we have been building out the Dark Universe into an ongoing narrative to rival the MCU.
And rival it we have in this endgame-sized episode.
This is going to be a really big one.
So, here's what we've decided to do. Well, let's just start up front with setting some expectations. You may have looked at the runtime of this episode and been like, wait, a Dylan episode under 2 hours? I hope. Hey,
you now have the record for the longest pitch.
I know I do.
Until today.
I know I do. So just so everyone has something to compare it to, A Native American Werewolf in Paris, our longest episode yet, had a pitch length of 65 pages. Dylan has only had a month to write this script, the least amount of time since phase 1. Because he had to wait for me to do mine. And then in the last 4 weeks, literally up to, we were supposed to start recording an hour and a half ago, but Dylan was making edits on my couch while I played Mario. So this is really down to the wire. And he texted me on his way to my apartment and said, this might have to be 2 episodes because the pitch is 80 pages.
Yep.
A full, 15 minutes of read time longer than A Native American Werewolf in Paris.
And I threw out a total of about 18 pages.
And here's the bigger problem with that, which is that because he had such a short window of time, we have to release this episode in 2 weeks.
That is simply not enough time to edit and score something of that girth.
Let's not talk about girth. Although your episodes are the horny ones, so I guess we can start early.
This is my least horny one.
Really?
Yes, actually, this is the first of
More hunchy than horny.
Yes, this is the first of these scripts that has really no sexual content in it. And that's good because the Cat People episode, like any version of Cat People, is going to be all about sex. All sex all the time.
So not only is it not enough time to edit and score that in 2 weeks, but also I'm writing a fucking musical right now, also because of Dylan. So I am busy writing a bunch of music and trying to get this story done, and we now have what is presumably going to be a 3-hour episode. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to split this one up. We have decided ahead of time. That way, I always hate when I know we're going to run long because then I feel like I have to abbreviate my thoughts and we just have to keep moving. Let's give us a little breathing room. Mm-hmm. We can talk about the pitch. We can talk about the predictions.
Yeah, that way it can be a 4-hour episode.
And, oh God, we're just going to undo all of the time saving. Okay, we'll still hurry it along. But
Dalton, it's so much fun being your nemesis. I can't even tell you.
So we are going to split this into 2 episodes. I'm sorry. I know that leaves you on a cliffhanger, or maybe it won't. I don't know where we're going to split it. I don't know what happens in this movie. Do you know where we're going to split this, by the way?
Yes. Okay. I put a spot where normally we have a spot in the middle of Act 2 where we take a break. That's just where
Is there a cliffhanger?
I would say question mark.
Okay.
Depends on how closely you've been paying attention.
Okay. So pay close attention, everybody. The part 2 will come out a week from today. Just like we do with the Dark Legion episodes, we just need an extra week to finish up the scoring and the editing. And then basically our schedule gets bumped by a week because after that, it'll be another 2 weeks before our next guest episode, 2 weeks until Love Never Dies. That way I also have an extra week to finish my composing for the Love Never Dies music. By the way, I just want to set expectations with that too. I'm not writing a whole musical. I'm doing what Dylan has set up, which is like 3.5 songs.
However, unlike me, I just did piano demos.
I am allergic
Dalton
to
is
that.
producing tracks. You're allergic to doing piano demos the way I'm allergic to doing scene summaries.
Yes.
I need the whole scene. You need the whole production.
Yeah. We both have a disease, and we're waiting for one of you to come put us out of our misery. This podcast is a call for help.
Anyway, so this is the very first time, I can't believe it made it this long. It's the first time that we're actually adjusting our schedule.
Yes.
But you get an extra episode out of it. So I think we can call it even.
Don't be mad at us. Never be mad at us. We're good boys.
That's rule number 1.
Let's get into it. We had so many predictions for this episode, I think especially fueled by, people had more of an idea of where this was going to go because of A Native American Werewolf in Paris. To remind you all, this is the second part of our House of Frankenstein duology, which means that the pitch that Dylan is about to give theoretically takes place at the same time as A Native American Werewolf in Paris, and will have much crossover. I set up a bunch of events that need to be dealt with in your pitch, such as the collapse of Notre Dame.
Yeah. These two
who
movies
was the
should
voice
fit,
in the bathroom.
Yes.
Yeah.
These two scripts should fit together like crooked teeth. And
Yes.
I think I've done a pretty good job of answering all of the challenges that you gave me. I also wanted it to be done in such a way where you could watch them in either order and preserve certain mysteries.
Okay, that's nice. We did have some people on the Discord say that you were going to start this with like Gwen waking up and being like, I just had the craziest dream, and then completely throw out everything I had
if
done.
I was looking for a way to immediately ruin our show and start like a creative Cold War between the two of us, that would be a great way to do it.
I mean, it would be interesting to some degree if this podcast turned into just us trying to fuck up each other's lives as much as possible.
We could make that a theme for a particular season or something.
I mean,
this time we're
it kind of seems like it's the
trying
theme
to
for this
swerve
season.
each other. Yeah.
But let's get into some of the predictions. We had so many. I'm sorry we can't read all of them once again.
These are, I think, almost all going to be new for me because I didn't get to read this thread. I was too busy working on this script.
Yeah. You have been head down in this script. I tried to group these by just sort of common thoughts because there were some recurring ideas. So I'm sorry if yours doesn't get read. It's not because it wasn't good. It's an 80-page pitch, I guess. One common prediction was that Victor himself would be our hunchback. That there would be some sort of confusion, or maybe Victor gets physically altered in some way, but there would be no separate hunchback. It would just be Victor. Christian Evangelista on Twitter said this. Andy from the Discord said this. And sort of tangentially, Roxanne from the Discord said that Quasimodo would not be in this movie. I don't know if that means no hunchback at all or just no one named Quasimodo.
That would certainly be economical given the characters that we have already.
True. A lot of people thought that you might do another title bait and switch, or I guess we might, because I did Bride and Frankenstein. You did Phantom of the Phantom of the opera. So the Cubics Rube on Instagram and Luke, aka Coltreg, on the Discord both thought you were going to fuck with us with the title and it would not be called The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
No, I mean, I think that would have been too far from the challenge that we gave each other. I think that...
Unless it was like the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And it's about, oh my gosh, it could be like that episode of the X-Files where like there's the other guy living inside the guy. And like the Hunchback of the Hunchback would be alive and have its own Hunchback. This is actually an idea.
Yeah, actually, you would write a great version of that.
That would be, yeah.
This is that body horror shit that you're great at.
Several people thought you were going to do another stealth musical. Which would be crazy given that you only had 4 weeks to write.
Yeah,
this.
and that I finished it on your couch. That would be pretty wild. But if I'm over there and I'm actually doing MIDI programming. I'm hiding the Logic fucking screen from you.
I was deep in Mario Wonder, so I don't know what you're doing. But John,
we'll say confidently I have not written a musical this time. Last time I was cagey, and so I leave myself room to be like, I didn't lie to you. No, I did not do a musical this time.
Well, a couple people thought you might. Both John P. N. Ferreira on Instagram and Llewellyn on the Discord wanted a song in the vein of Hellfire, which I believe is from the Disney Hunchback.
It is one of the sickest fucking Disney songs of all time.
I need to rewatch it. I haven't seen it since I was probably 7.
I was going to rewatch it for this and then decided it was not necessary.
And then Miss Drake on the Discord also thought it might be a stealth musical. Several people thought there might be time shenanigans, which was kind of surprising that you might play with the timeline or perhaps even do some time travel. Rhino Man 78 on the Discord thought that. BM Squared on the Discord thought that you would hit all the beats that I set up from A Native American Werewolf in Paris, but not linearly. Maybe do like a Quentin Tarantino and sort of jump around and play with the order of things.
That would have been fun.
The thing is, like, a lot of people are expecting you to get really experimental with this. And again, you only had 4 weeks.
I don't think I went that weird with this one.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to say too much. I'm flattered by you all clearly think a lot of me as a narrative trickster. But I did not go in that direction this time.
Nicholas Bertol 93 on Instagram also thought that this would be a story intercut between different time periods with flashbacks of Victor and Quasimodo, who may be immortal and has been around since Victor's time. Another common prediction that about character crossover between your movie and mine. A lot of people thought we would see more of the characters that didn't make much of an appearance in my movie. So that we would, for example, Frodo Man on Instagram thought we would see Skylar Gazondo wandering around Paris because why not? Having his little excursion that he tried to get Gwen on. Beerus, #BoofNation on the Discord, thinks that Arthur, the homeless man from Werewolf in Paris, would be a major character, which I don't think I mentioned this on my episode, but he was originally supposed to be a major character, which is why he has a name, because he was going to be a recurring character, and most of his beats I replaced with Charlie and sort of beefed up. And executive producer Dick Wolf thinks that Kiernan Shipka's character and Skylar Gazondo will reappear because they didn't have much to do. A lot of predictions about Hunchback's origin and potential relationship with Victor. Fine Artistry and Joan Palmer on Instagram think that Cassie and Victor will adopt Quasimodo and make a little monster family. Big Funny Films on Twitter thinks that Hunchback is a distant ancestor of Igor, the original Igor. And Roxanne on the Discord thinks that Igor is the Hunchback, that we will just be getting Igor from the holiday special, I suppose.
These are a lot of really good economical suggestions that my 80-page script could maybe have benefited from.
Irish Coffee on the Discord thinks Hunchback is a relative of Victor, and that would play into sort of the family dynamics we've set up with Victor and Caroline and Gwen and all that. Vivian on Blue Sky also predicted a father-son dynamic between Victor and the Hunchback. Not Daredevil on Twitter is expecting a Romani Quasimodo and a Romani supporting cast, sort of similar to our House of Dracula stuff that we touched on.
Yeah, it sounds like a suggestion that Daredevil would make, but, you know, I'm not going to look too much into it.
I get it. Saf on the Discord thinks the Hunchback is a woman, because, of course, Saf does. A lot of people think that Victor will die somehow, even though we see Victor in Heaven's Gate, which takes place 2 years later. We did talk about how that sort of maybe robbed us of some potential stakes because we know that Gwen, Victor, and Cassie all survive.
Well, I will tell you, I ran into that because there was a period while I was working on this where I kind of did want to kill Victor. And realized that I couldn't.
I actually wanted you to kill Victor in this movie, but you couldn't.
So spoilers.
Yeah.
Not really a spoiler because you've seen him a year after this story, but Victor lives.
Vivian on Blue Sky thought that Victor would give his life for the Hunchback, possibly ripping out his own heart to revive the Hunchback.
People get very specific sometimes.
I love it. And Roxanne and the 78th Doctor on Discord also thought Victor would die. Those are kind of the big recurring ideas. I do want to give some quick shout outs to some of the wildest predictions we got.
Lay it on me.
Our Discord was filled with absolutely batshit crazy predictions. If you want to read those, join our Discord because there were a lot of people thinking Quasimodo would be a rapper and people submitting rap lyrics for Quasimodo that Dylan would have to perform.
I was so heads down on this. I did not get to see any of this. I usually try to keep up on the Discord as much as possible. This seems like a hit, like a fucking hoot. Also, I did see, just because I do get push notifications, I usually just have to kind of not look at them. I know there were a lot of Rat Hands based predictions.
Yes, Rat Hands, of course, came up again.
We mentioned Rat Hands here on the air. This is a meme that has taken over the fucking community of the Discord.
Yes, we have a Rat Hands emoji now.
We can't go 20 minutes without somebody bringing up Rat Hands.
Well, my favorite Rat Hands idea was that because in our universe, none of the universal monsters exist, like as entertainment, right? Because they're actual people, that rat hands would be our universe's like equivalent of like a Frankenstein or a Wolfman, just like a classic monster character. And like people would watch rat hands movies on TV.
God, and it's tempting sometimes to think that you'd want to throw something like that in a script, but then that's like, it's just going too deep into like the My Little Pony self-referential.
We don't want to make these. We know we have a lot of listeners who are not in the Discord, and we don't want to exclude anybody.
Yes, and to be clear, that's not a knock against My Little Pony as in general as a show.
Yeah, we know you're a brony.
It's not my thing, but I've seen things about it that I like. It's like knowing that they would sometimes just do shit that's just for the people who are on Tumblr,
just for the people who are jacking off to that show.
Yeah, I mean not necessarily that, but like to like play to the memes that existed as be like, hey, we see you.
Yeah.
Y'all know we see you because we talk about you on the show.
Yes.
So
some of the wilder predictions.
Some of you talk to us directly on the Discord.
In addition to rat hands, someone thought that Notre Dame would end up being a transformer that Victor would have to fight. Like the cathedral itself would be a giant robot kaiju thing. You're looking like this might actually be part of your script. And
I was trying to see what kind of face would I make that would make Dalton think I'm trying not to reveal that Notre Dame is a fucking transformer.
This is a long one from Togue on the Discord that I just really liked. Now that Gwen is an alpha, Victor decides to upgrade and creates a laser arm, which, while destroyed in the climax of the film, provides us with a backdoor pilot to the TV spin-off show Frankenstein X, where Victor's descendant teams up with a time-traveling Norman Bates in a DeLorean, played by Freddie Highmore, in a continuation to Bates Motel, to duel with our first-ever live-action Gru, played by Steve Carell, canonically placing Despicable Me universe in a far-future version of the Dark Universe.
First and foremost, I'm not casting Steve Carell's live-action Gru. If we're doing Gru...
Who's a good Gru?
Honestly, the person who comes to mind is actually an actor I fucking hate. He's one of the hosts of the Great British Bake Off for a period of time. He's in Wonka. He's a round-balled Englishman.
Oh, is he the person that played Tweedledee and Tweedledum in Tim Burton's...
Probably.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that movie since
Matt
theaters.
something.
Yeah. I kind of can't stand that guy. But occasionally he really gets to me, and I think that he'd be great as a character I find extremely irritating.
I just liked how specific that one was and how much it weaves in even more wild shit.
Some of you should really just start your own podcasts with our blessing.
No, listen to ours instead. Don't listen to Dylan.
We need a Sunday morning wars. We need a competition going head to head with a rival podcast.
So those are the predictions I wanted to read. As far as my own predictions, I'm expecting it to be long. And I have a feeling that will be correct.
When did you write that down?
I just thought of it, actually.
Okay.
I don't have too many predictions. I'm just excited to see, because basically I already created the roadmap for it. I gave you my predictions and I'm making you stick to them.
Yeah,
I have forced you into meeting my predictions. The one question I have that I don't know if you'll answer, but it came to mind while I was writing A Native American Werewolf, which is, why is Cassie still with Victor? And this has been a question that's kind of been bothering me because it made sense in Bride and Frankenstein. They've just gone through this traumatic event. They don't know much about each other. They need the company. But now they seem to really be an item, although we haven't defined their relationship much. And yet we keep sort of emphasizing Victor's more childlike emotional impulses. And it really, I was writing A Native American Werewolf and I was like, why is Cassie putting up with him? Like, why is this such an attachment? Why are they still together? I don't know that we've justified it.
I kind of agree. And it was one of my goals going into the script to better define Victor and Cassie's relationship.
Yeah. I mean, this would be the place to do it.
A lot of other shit happened in the story, and all of it had to go.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That is one of my bigger regrets here. There are a couple threads that I'll address as we go, that if this were to balloon into like a full fucking feature script, there's a lot of stuff that I think that there are questions that I would really like to answer that are both presented by other films and this one.
Yeah.
But I spent so much of this movie addressing the stuff from this movie and from the seeds that you left for me that I don't know that we know Cassie any better after this one.
That's definitely, it's unfortunate
That's a bummer.
because,
There's another character that I also like. I set up the idea that there's more going on with this character, but I never get to pay it off, and I would really love to flesh it out if I got to do another draft of this.
Yeah, because this is still, while it is the Hunchback of Notre Dame, it is also a Frankenstein sequel. It is sort of our Frankenstein threequel. And
it is extremely that, I will say. This
Okay.
movie is as much a sequel to Your Frankenstein as to Your Bride and Frankenstein.
Okay, because I feel like the big question from Bride and Frankenstein is, what is Cassie and Victor's relationship going to be? And my worry is that we're not going to have a chance to address it before the end of the phase, because we don't have another Frankenstein solo movie, and then we're right into the Dark Legion. And my fear now is that we're going to be in a position where we're wrapping up phase 3 and still don't really know who Cassie is or why she's here all the time. But that's something for us to figure out as we go.
Yeah, if that's important to us, then we're going to have to, look at it.
Yeah.
We're going to have to make her more central, because like we didn't use her very much in The Mummy's Hand.
Well, because she was the human character, we kind of had to, without any training, we had to get her out of the way.
Right. But we have, from the beginning of this thing with the book, we have given her a more prominent role in terms of like how the team functions. And
maybe
like
she's just staying with Victor because it's lucrative.
That was a conflict that I wanted to address.
Yeah.
Because I wanted there to be more of a thread about Victor being self-conscious about why Cassie is spending so much time with him.
Yeah.
And I wanted to address the like, are they sleeping together type questions. And I wanted like to define the relationship.
Yeah.
This is 80 pages long. I don't get to any of it.
Oh man. Okay.
Sorry.
Well, we should dive in. We've got a lot to do. And we're already 23 minutes in. We haven't started the script yet. So let's go.
Let's go. Oh, also the director.
Yes. I just saw it on the page and I am very intrigued by this.
First and only choice for this movie is Sam Raimi.
Wow.
I thought
amazing we haven't gotten him in here yet.
That's the thing, is that I've been saving him. I've been like, no, I know I want to, I have waiting for a movie where it felt right to use Sam Raimi. Also, not that it's been like an effort to do. I know originally we set this as a mission and it became very easily a natural thing to do once you like broaden your mind in terms of what pool of directors you're working with. Mm-hmm. This is actually going to break our no white dude streak that we've had going on since probably
phase 1.
Yeah, our last movie that we chose a white dude as our director was Jekyll X Hyde.
Okay, yeah.
So it's been a while.
That's a good streak.
Yeah, pretty good streak. I think. Anyway. So
Sam Raimi's perfect horror director, and of course, franchise director. We know from the Spider-Man and Doctor Strange films. So
Sam Raimi is also terrific at being able to manage a story with really weird tonal shifts.
Yes,
Sam Raimi can juggle horror, camp, comedy, and some really compelling human drama.
Yes.
I think that there's...
And action.
And, of course, action. This is also an action script. I wanted to have all of that in there, and being able... And imagining how Sam Raimi would do it actually gave me the confidence to stick to my guns on some of these choices. Okay. Because the idea of... No, I know it can be done in the hands of a deft director who makes that their thing.
Yeah.
So, submitted for the approval of the Universal Studios Board of Directors, this is Dylan Roth's The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Sparks of electricity light up a deep, dark basement with walls of mortar and stone. At first, it appears that the image is in black and white as we pan across archaic electric scientific equipment, spitting currents like in the classic 1931 Frankenstein. But as we scan across the room, we can see that there is also modern technology here. Sensors, cameras, and monitors. Wires and cables from the old equipment all lead to an operating table where a body lies still under a white sheet. A team of doctors buzzes around the table, checking vitals, taking samples, and calling out results and instructions to one another. Their words are unintelligible. The operation is overseen from a distance by a man in a black and crimson red robe and a heavy golden cross around his neck, flanked by soldiers in state-of-the-art black tactical gear. This man is in his 60s with a severe angular face and a bit of madness in his eyes. To be played by Lambert Wilson, best known as the Merovingian from the Matrix sequels.
We got the fucking Merovingian in the building.
First casting decision I made. He clutches a thick leather-bound volume to his chest. The doctors work frantically around the body as the old equipment starts glowing and sparking more dramatically. Finally, a set of large electrodes fires steady bolts of electricity directly at the body. Machinery fizzles and explodes all around the room. The doctors scramble and dive away from the operating table, which is being bombarded by man-made lightning bolts. The man in the robe doesn't flinch. He just watches. Smoke begins to billow out from underneath the white sheet. One of the doctors throws a switch, and all the equipment shuts down. Only the soft emerging lighting remains, reflecting through the smoky air of the dark chamber. The robed man walks slowly toward the operating table. No one speaks. He places the leather book, whose cover we don't see, on a nearby tabletop and lays his hands on the body's chest. He leans his head down against it. No breathing, no heartbeat. He stands up, chokes back a bit of anger, frustration, maybe grief. The robed man slams a fist against the body's chest. And again. And again. The guards and doctors look on but do nothing. Finally, the robed man picks up the heavy leather book from off the table, cries out, and slams it down flat against the body's chest. The body takes a loud, sharp breath inward, nearly sucking the white sheet over his head and into his throat. The creature beneath the sheet spasms against the restraints on his wrists, ankles, and neck. He wails. It's the cry of a newborn in baritone. The robed man takes a step back, once again clutching the book to his own chest. A mad smile stretches across his face. Tears stream down his cheeks. One of the machines releases a last gasp of sparks. The man cries out,
Il est vivant! Il est vivant!
The subtitles read, It's alive! It's alive! Finally, we see the gold lettering embossed onto the leather binding of the robed man's book, Caroline von Frankenstein. We float above this scene, up through the ceiling, through multiple subterranean levels where light fixtures and equipment are shorting out and exploding. We reach the ground floor. It's the main hall of a grand church, 3 stories tall. A trail of fire travels up one of the walls, burning through wooden latticework. We keep floating higher until we leave the building altogether. We're in Paris, under a starry night sky, watching a fire spread across the roof of the legendary Notre Dame Cathedral. The siren of a fire engine blares, and we cut to black. The Hunchback of Notre Dame.
Wow, so this was the cause of the Notre Dame fire.
Yup.
Love that, love that. Seamlessly blending the Hunchback mythology with Frankenstein imagery. Perfect. Love it.
Act 1. We fade back in on the Notre Dame Cathedral as it is today, late in the process of a restoration from the fire. The roof has been rebuilt and a new tall spire raised, but there's still scaffolding and work crews all around the outside. 5 years later. We float over Paris, getting a nice introduction to the City of Lights at twilight, until we find ourselves at a house in the 13th arrondissement. In one of the house's bedrooms, a woman paces back and forth between her closet and a full-length mirror. We get an impression of her through the room before we get a good look at the woman herself. There's a bed, a vanity, a practical wooden desk, all set slightly lower to the ground than usual. On the bed, there are several formal dresses and gowns. She throws another on the pile. On the desk is a laptop open to a word processor and a tall stack of handwritten notes. On the wall in front of the desk are a mess of Post-it notes of every color, surrounding a typed letter which is stuck to the wall with a push pin. It's a copy of a book contract, or a cover letter to one, probably. I don't know how book contracts work. Offering a $250,000 advance to Cassandra Falk for her nonfiction book, The Dark Legion, The True Story of Earth's Mightiest Monsters. Over the bottom of the page is another sticky note, on which 3 words are written in black permanent marker, Hard Part's Over. It's over this that we hear the woman's voice, calling loud enough for someone to hear in the next room. How's it going in there? We cut to the next room, where a very broad-shouldered man is sitting in front of a mirror, wearing a white dress shirt. We are peering over his shoulder, but we don't get a good look at his reflection, only his right hand as he dabs a pad into some makeup and raises it to his face. The hand itself looks normal, human.
I will be ready shortly.
He then brings his left hand over, which is much, much larger, and covered in stitching and sores. He scratches it with his right hand, leaving visible flakes of dead skin. We cut away to follow a well-dressed waiter through the dining room of a high-end restaurant. Everyone here is wealthy, beautiful, and very French. Nothing and no one is out of place. The waiter serves a delicate appetizer to a patron, who nods in approval. We continue to roam the restaurant until we make our way to the maitre d's podium. We stay on the host's face as a pair of customers approaches. He does not initially look up at them. As he says, in subtitled French, Bonjour, and welcome to Contemplations. May I have your reservation? From off-screen, the woman in front answers. Bonjour. Falk, party of 2. Yes, of course, Miss Falk. Your table is ready. Allow me to... The maitre d' has finally looked up from his tablet to regard his 2 customers. The first is Cassie Falk, played in the film by Meredith Eaton, a 4-foot-tall woman wearing a black couture dress and a very fine wristwatch. The other is Victor Frankenstein, played in the film by Javier Bardem, a 7-foot-tall man with shoulders nearly as wide as Cassie is tall. He wears a perfectly tailored black tuxedo with waistcoat and tails. One of his sleeves is significantly shorter than the other, on account of one of his arms being significantly shorter than the other, and also thinner, and also of a totally different complexion. Speaking of complexion, Victor's face is covered in a thick layer of foundation, which fails to conceal that his face is stitched together by thread and chicken wire, and that his seams are damp with pus. The maitre d's face turns bone white, but he doesn't even twitch. Right this way. Cut to a bit later at the dinner table, where a waiter has poured a sip's worth of red wine into a tasting glass for Cassie's approval. She swirls it, sniffs it, sips, swishes, and nods in approval. The waiter then pours the patrons a full glass each and departs. Cassie peeks over each shoulder, then giggles to herself. She converses with Victor in English. I've always wanted to do that.
I'm not certain of what it is you've done.
Me neither. It's good wine, though. Victor carefully raises the glass, which proportionately looks a lot like Cassie did with a tasting glass. He takes a small sip, seems to enjoy it, then winces a bit. It burns. Oh, hell, I'm sorry, Victor. Didn't even occur to me.
Nor to me. Evidently, this is not my original tongue. I'd never noticed before.
Are you going to be okay?
I'll be fine, thank you, Cassie. Though perhaps you should finish the bottle yourself.
Cassie notices a well-groomed couple in a nearby table, giving her and Victor the stink eye. Works for me. Will you still toast with me?
Of course.
Victor breaks off a small piece of bread from a basket on the table and drops it into his wine glass. Cassie bursts out laughing, which befuddles Victor and draws a lot of attention from the neighboring tables. A patron flags down a waiter and whispers something in his ear. Here's a cultural reference.
Yeah, I'm not getting this.
That's where the phrase toasting came from. You used to actually take a piece of toast and drop it in your wine.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
that would be how Victor knows to do it.
This is your before sunrise. Way to look like an idiot, Dalton.
Yeah, I guess I'm not cultured enough.
A patron flags down a waiter and whispers something in his ear. Back at our table, Victor and Cassie each raise their glass. To the Dark Legion, my future bestseller, and the friends who inspired it. Victor smiles as he watches Cassie sip her wine. Which reminds me, I have something for you. She reaches into her bag and retrieves a wrapped rectangular package. She places it on the table between them.
Cassie, I understood that this dinner was in your honor,
It is.
but I have brought no gift for you.
The dinner is gift enough. Also, since Christmas, you have knitted or crocheted me 2 sweaters, a scarf, and 3 pairs of gloves, one of which even fits. I think we can call it even. Victor carefully unfolds the wrapping paper. Inside is an old, polished silver picture frame holding a painting of a family of 4 dressed in early 19th century formal wear. It's the portrait of the Frankenstein family that we saw in Dalton's first Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Victor, Elizabeth, Angelina Jolie, their 10-year-old son William, and their teenage daughter Caroline, an age-down Alicia Vikander.
How can this be?
Igor found it rummaging around the castle. He sent it to me, and I had it restored. Victor holds the frame in both hands and gazes at Elizabeth's face in the portrait. His eyes well up with tears.
I have not seen her face in almost 200 years. It is even more beautiful than I remember.
We cut to a flashback, a moment from Frankenstein when the hands of the creature Victor and the resurrected Elizabeth touch for the first time, and a white spark of electricity passes between them. Now to another earlier scene from Victor's point of view. Elizabeth, dewy with sweat, sits up in bed and cradles a newborn baby. The baby is crying. Elizabeth looks up at us and smiles. Would you like to hold her?
Hey, Angelina Jolie got a line.
She gets a line!
An original Dark Universe cast member. Cast
Yes.
by Universal Studios.
Yeah.
Gets her first line in Phase 3.
I would never in a million years cast Angelina Jolie in this part because it is still tiny. I would love to do more with this character in the script, and I have an idea of what I would do.
Mm-hmm.
She's not going to get to do it.
All right.
This is her only line.
Angelina Jolie, you got one line.
She's
going to
have to earn her paycheck this time.
Yeah.
Victor reaches out and carefully takes the baby from her. He holds baby Caroline out in front of him, in front of us, and looks down at her face as she cries. Very suddenly and very briefly, no more than 10 frames, we see a moment from a totally different scene, also from a first-person's perspective, of a hand striking a young woman across the face. We jolt back to the present. Cassie smiles at Victor, happy for him and pleased with herself. Victor's eyes flick to Caroline's face in the portrait. Like her parents, she isn't smiling, as smiling for portraits wasn't in fashion at the time, but the artist has captured something in her eyes, a certain hollowness. We snap to another flashback. It's Caroline, age 16, yelling up at us and crying.
You've never loved me. You don't even know me.
We see a few frames of the slap again. Now we're looking at the painting again, at 10-year-old William Frankenstein. His eyes are bright, full of life. We flash to Victor's POV again, holding his smiling infant son up over his head. And now to a blurry first-person view as Victor's hands, now his larger, stitched-up monster hands, wrap around the neck of a teenage boy. Back at the restaurant, Victor drops the portrait on the table and rises to his feet with a start. He stumbles backwards, knocking over the table, which falls forward towards Cassie and pins her chest to the floor. She screams. The heavy wine bottle lands with a thud inches from her head. Victor backs into the diner sitting behind him. There's more shouting. Some of the other guests have now gotten out of their seats to face him or to cower from him. Victor looks around the room in a panic. It takes him a moment to even notice that Cassie's been hurt, by which time another pair of guests is already lifting the table off of her while a waiter drags her to safety. Someone takes out their phone and starts filming. One of the diners gets right up in Victor's face, screaming threats. Cassie tries to speak to defend him, but a deep breath causes a stabbing pain in her ribs. He starts to move towards her to offer a hand, but an aggressive diner steps in his way.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. Please, back away.
This dining room is becoming a mob scene.
Cassie,
Victor looks at Cassie, then at the door. He looks back at her. She meets his gaze and nods. Victor takes a deep breath and then bolts straight for the front door, knocking down any diners and staff members in his path. He knocks the door clear off its hinges on his way out. In the restaurant, someone helps Cassie to her feet. As the rest of the patrons collect themselves, she looks out the front window of the restaurant. Victor is out of sight. Elsewhere, a man sits in a tall ergonomic chair in front of a computer monitor, which is the only light source in the room. The chair blocks our view of his body. We cut to the screen and we see that he's playing a competitive online fighting game. Let's say Tekken 8, since that's the new hotness. This episode's brought to you by Tekken 8.
Is this Philip? Are we seeing Philip?
I thought about it. Sorry. We do not hear any sound from the game. On the wall above his desk, a red light, like an old police siren, starts spinning. This is also silent. The man groans as the distraction has cost him a perfect victory in his game. He hurries and pounds his foe for a few more seconds, securing the win. He jumps out of his chair, revealing the unusual shape of his body. He's asymmetrical across two axes, with long arms, a built upper body, and comparably short, lean legs. One of his shoulders is noticeably higher than the other, and his neck all but disappears into his lopsided, overgrown trapezius muscles. For proportions and style of movement, think the X-Men's Hank Beast McCoy.
Before the blueness?
Before the blueness.
Yeah.
For the sake of clarity, I'll dispense with the suspense here. Dispense with the suspense? What was I thinking? and tell you that this is our Quasimodo, played by Daniel Durant, who played the older brother in Coda.
Have not seen it.
He's really good in it. With the grace and intensity of Tarzan, Quasimodo dashes across the room, which we can now see has ancient stone walls and lamps that clash with the very modern, high-end consumer electronics with which it's furnished. He pulls on a loose, dark-hooded sweatshirt which obscures his face from us as he runs out into the stone corridor, which is likewise awash in spinning red lights. Here, we can also hear the blaring alarm that accompanies it, and the footfalls and chatter of several other black-clad individuals all jogging down the corridor in the same direction. Quasimodo doesn't have to jog. He swings above the crowd on handholds that have been fastened to the ceiling. The end of the hall opens up into a large chamber, not unlike the secret underground Prodigium headquarters seen in The Mummy, but not as expansive or well-staffed. It's an off-putting amalgam of medieval stonework, metal platforms and catwalks, and state-of-the-art computer equipment. This is the Court of Miracles. That's a reference to the book.
Okay.
About 20 people in uniform hurry down the steel stairs and join their leader, who is standing in front of a large computer monitor manned by still another officer. The leader's status is obvious. Where everyone else wears matching black work suits, he wears an ornamented crimson and black robe and a large gold and ruby cross around his neck. This is the man from the prologue, Archdeacon Claude Frollo. Quasimodo leaps down from a catwalk and lands next to Frodo.
Don't say Frodo.
Frollo. Fro only live once. Quasimodo leaps down from a catwalk and lands next to Frollo. The two of them look up at a monitor, which displays a shaky cell phone video of Victor Frankenstein in the restaurant, knocking a well-dressed man aside and fleeing the scene, leaving behind a bruised human woman. The technician sitting at the monitor freezes the video and scans frame by frame for the clearest look at Victor's face. We cut back and forth between this image of Victor and a close-up of Quasimodo, which is our first look at his face. One of his eyes is slightly higher than the other, and nearly swollen shut from overgrown flesh. Both eyes widen, not just with shock, but with recognition. We cut back to a medium shot of Quasimodo and Frollo. Frollo pulls up the long sleeves of his robe and signs to Quasimodo in LSF, aka French Sign Language. This is subtitled for us.
Well,
Quasimodo grits his teeth as he looks up at the blown-up image of Victor Frankenstein. He signs. It's him.
I just want to shout out, I didn't put it in the predictions because only one person predicted it, but someone in the Discord did predict that Quasimodo would be deaf.
In the Universal film, and I think in the book, though I did not read the Victor Hugo novel.
'Cause you
Sorry,
can't
folks,
read.
I can't read, and I'm not going to read Victor Hugo because it's not a really great author for a guy who can't read.
Big slam on Victor Hugo.
Oh, I don't. All respect in the world to the guy who wrote Les Mis, but it's too dense for me and my attention span. It's not going to happen.
But so he's deaf in the novel.
In the novel,
Maybe.
he's deaf from the bells.
I
In the Universal movie, he's deaf from being in the bell tower all the time.
Sure. Okay.
And so it felt like, no, my version of the character will be deaf.
Yeah.
Um,
yeah, that makes sense.
And also, there's an actor who I really love for this part. Daniel Durant, the older brother from Coda. I've only seen him in that because he's mostly a stage actor. He is a deaf actor. No disrespect to Troy Kotsur, who won the Oscar, the Best Supporting Actor Oscar that year. I actually like the son's performance better. I think he's really good. He also has a look that I really like.
Yeah, I Googled him and yeah, he looks like a good fit for Quasimodo.
I am going to be covering his face in a lot of prosthetics.
Sure, of course.
But we'll talk more. I have a couple more things that I want to talk about why I think he's so great, but I think that we should move on with the story.
Sure.
Back at the house, Victor sits in a large leather armchair in front of the lit living room fireplace. He's washed the makeup off his face, but he's still wearing most of the tuxedo. He watches the fire and takes deep, controlled breaths. He closes his eyes, and we flash briefly to Caroline's angry, crying face, looking dead ahead at us.
You've never loved me.
Victor opens his eyes with a start as we hear the sound of the front door clicking open. He whirls to his feet and sees Cassie slowly enter, pressing her hand against her ribcage. He rushes to greet her, dropping to one knee and taking her hand in his.
Cassie, I'm so sorry. Are you all right?
Cassie winces with pain and holds up a finger. Don't do that. Victor shakes his head, frustrated with himself, and rises to his feet. He keeps Cassie's hand. She looks up at him.
Are you badly hurt?
It's only a bruised rib. I'll be fine. The real damage was financial. I had to give the staff twice what we would have paid for dinner to keep them from filing a police report.
Are we in danger?
It's all taken care of. I'd rather we not mention this little episode to Gwen when she gets home tomorrow. I don't want to shake her up right before her family comes to visit. She's got enough on her mind as it is.
I don't want to make her life more difficult, nor yours. No apology is recompense enough for my behavior. I am deeply ashamed.
Cassie leans on Victor as she walks towards the fireplace and takes a seat in her own easy chair. Victor kneels again. Cassie softens up a bit. What happened back there?
The portrait. Seeing my family's faces brought long-buried memories to the surface. Things that I wish never to relive.
Oh, God. Victor, I'm sorry. I wasn't thinking.
Don't apologize. You had every reason to believe that seeing my family's faces again would bring me joy. Were I a better man, perhaps it would.
Victor rises to his feet and looks back at the fire, turning his back on Cassie.
Instead, my torment begins anew.
Victor, I know you regret how you treated your daughter, and I know that will always haunt you, but there's nothing, truly nothing you could have done that would justify what she did to you.
She brought me back from the dead.
To hurt you, to punish you.
To prove that which I did everything in my power to suppress and deny. Her genius. I stand here 200 years later, an immortal monument to the unparalleled genius of Caroline Clerval, as permanent as the damage I did to her, and just as hideous.
You had a son, too. William, right? You've never told me much about him.
He and Caroline were very close. He never forgave me for sending her away.
And he died. Not long after you did, right?
Yes.
Before she can get up from her chair and say another word, Victor slumps away, upstairs to his lonely bedroom. In daylight, Victor and Cassie stand on a very old-school train platform as a steam engine pulls in. Victor is wearing a well-tailored suit, but no makeup this time. Cassie is in a stylish but practical dress. Not exactly Victorian, but not terribly modern either. Other bystanders on the train platform are likewise dolled up. The train comes to a stop and the passengers disembark. Through a cloud of steam emerges Gwen Conliffe, played by Amber Midthunder, in distressed jeans, a t-shirt, and a faux leather jacket. Cassie calls out to her. Gwen, over here! Gwen rushes over and hugs Cassie, then Victor.
Welcome home, Gwen. How was your trip?
Great. I brought souvenirs. Aw, you didn't have to get us anything. I've been living rent-free in your Parisian townhouse for 6 months. You paid for my train ticket to London, and tomorrow you're flying my family here from New Mexico. So humor a bitch, okay? Okay. Victor and Cassie take a seat on a bench not far from the train tracks. Gwen hands each of them a gift box. Cassie opens hers and gasps. Inside is a white lace garter, like the kind that brides toss into the crowd at old school wedding receptions. "Oh, Gwen, thank you. I've waited so long for this." Gwen looks to Victor. "Go on, Vic. Open yours while it's fresh." Victor looks down at his gift box, which is a little bit larger than a shoebox. He shakes it in his hands. Something is moving around in there. He carefully opens the lid. Inside is a newborn baby boy, shrieking, wailing, covered in blood. Victor gasps and then looks up at Gwen, only it's not Gwen anymore. Now it's Caroline.
Don't you like it?
Victor wakes up with a start, in his big bed, damp with sweat and pus from the leaking seams on his face. The sun sets on the following night, and we see Gwen, the real Gwen this time, step out of a taxi across the street from Cassie's house. Nearby, there's a casually dressed woman about her age, Esmeralda Oprea,
Esmeralda!
played by Graciela Brancusi of 1883, yes, is a Romani actor, playing an acoustic guitar and singing something in a language that is neither English nor French. Gwen walks a little bit out of her way to drop €5 in the case before crossing the street. When it's somebody else's money, Gwen's an extremely generous tipper. We get a closer look at Esmeralda's guitar. There's a tuner clipped to the headstock with an inconspicuous camera lens on it, pointed towards the house. Victor is in his room when he hears the front door open and shut. Cassie and Gwen are conversing downstairs. Quietly as a man his size can manage, he steps into the hallway and creeps down the staircase, which faces away from the kitchen where the two women are chatting. Cassie is sitting at the kitchen counter typing on her laptop. Gwen is making herself a sandwich. "How are you feeling about tomorrow?" "Good." "You don't sound too sure." "I mean, it's been a long time since I've seen my family." Victor ducks back into the stairwell and sits on the steps. His breathing is short and his heart is pounding. Victor looks down at his shaking hands, his old, enormous green-gray left hand and his new, lean, olive-skinned right hand. He closes his eyes, trying to regain his composure. We flash back to the foyer of Castle Frankenstein, as a 16-year-old Caroline storms towards the front door. A fully human, but still quite tall, Victor Frankenstein hurries down the stairs, catching her just as she reaches the door. He slams his fist against it, holding it closed.
"You do not have my permission to leave. Is that right? I thought you insisted I leave, that I was no longer your daughter. I forbid you to continue your pursuit of this madness. This madness is your life's work. It is your life. It's all you are, this madness. Are you not a scientist? I am a healer. You corrupt natural philosophy. You meddle with forces your hands were not meant to wield. It is an affront to our Lord. My place is to birth some old baron's litter and then wither away like mother. Your mother is happy. The tragedy is that you may believe that. I will make this offer only once more, Caroline. Renounce your heresy and you may remain here with your family who loves you. You've never loved me. You don't even know me. Don't you understand? I've had to keep myself a secret from you. You banished my studies, my passions, my very heart from this house years ago. Finally being banished outright is a relief. Now at least my body may be reunited with my soul. You have no soul.
Victor strikes Caroline across the face. She falls to one knee and clutches her face.
You are a blasphemer, a witch. There is no college that will accept you, no journal that will publish you, no physician in Europe who will apprentice you. The carriage outside will take you to Eisenbach, where you will tend my sister's field until you become a farmer's wife, at which time you will tend his field and bear his children. Your mother and brother will be forbidden from visiting you there, and should you ever return here, the servants will be instructed to turn you away.
Caroline, a mess of tears, looks up at Victor, the resolve gone from her face.
May I say goodbye? Please, may I at least bid farewell to my mother? Your mother is sick with grief. She is in no condition to see you.
Caroline's face twists as she tries to boil her despair into rage.
You think so little of her.
Caroline gets back onto her feet, looks her father square into his eyes like she's trying to burn a hole through his, then opens the front door and leaves it open behind her. Vic? Victor looks up from his hands to find that Gwen is standing at the foot of the stairs with a puzzled look on her face. He sits a few steps up. They are at eye level with each other. You okay, Vic?
Yes. I'm sorry. My mind was elsewhere. Welcome home, Gwen.
Victor rises to his feet, turns away, and starts walking back upstairs. How was your trip to London, Gwen? Super normal. Just hanging out with my dead boyfriend's old fuck buddies, like you do. Wasn't it all awkward or depressing? And I didn't steal one of his high school graduation photos from his uncle's house. Thanks for asking. Victor, either oblivious to her sarcasm or just distracted, retreats into his room and closes the door. After an establishing shot of the cathedral, we cut back to the subterranean command center of the Court of Miracles, where a handful of uniformed operatives study images on the big bat computer monitor. There's really no better way to describe that, right?
Yeah, it's the bat computer. Yeah.
At the controls is a handsome man in his 30s, Phobos, played by French heartthrob Francois Civil. Esmeralda leans closely over his chair with a hand on his shoulder. Opposite Esmeralda stands Quasimodo, with his arms crossed in front of him. Phobos skims through the footage of Esmeralda's spy camera until it gets a good shot of Gwen. She speaks in French.
There. That's her. Can we get an ID?
Phobos types away at the keyboard for a moment, and scans of Gwen's police record appear on screen. Gwendolyn Conliffe, American, age 24.
And
the werewolf.
I fucking knew it. I smelled it on her. I can always smell it. We should lob a Tinkerbell through their living room window and take them all out right now.
She's interrupted by a stern voice from behind them.
That is not our mandate.
They turn to see Archdeacon Frollo descending the steel staircase. He joins them by the computer. Quasimodo is the last to turn around, having not heard Frollo. He turns to Esmeralda, who catches him up via LSF.
The College of Cardinals has decreed that werewolves are to be captured or killed only in response to attacks on humans, and there has been no such attack. Am I correct, Captain Phobos?
Yes, Your Eminence. We've recorded no werewolf activity. No werewolf activity at all, in fact, over the past 3 months. Quasimodo signs. That in itself is suspicious.
Indeed, but not a matter of immediate concern. Our concern is with the creature Frankenstein, an unholy beast unlike any we've faced before. He is not a child of God or the devil, but of man. Or rather, of woman. He is an abomination of science.
Science alone cannot explain him.
Perhaps. Or perhaps our understanding of science is merely insufficient to the task.
Are you about to quote Arthur C. Clarke to us, Archdeacon?
I am about to remind you that, however brilliant she may have been, Caroline Clerval was no god. After all, if she was...
Frollo places a hand on Quasimodo's lower, less misshapen shoulder.
What would that make me?
Quasimodo breaks eye contact with Frollo, then looks over at Esmeralda. They share a knowing look. Phobos notices. Frollo continues.
Nevertheless, if Victor Frankenstein has a werewolf companion, then that should factor into the timetable for our assault. Captain Phobos, I want your team conducting battle drills for 2 superhuman opponents. Agent Aprea, I want a covert action plan on my desk by midnight. See that you deliver it personally.
Frollo sneers a bit as he says this.
Yes, Your Eminence. Quasimodo, you're with me. We have a matter to discuss.
Frollo turns towards the stairway. Quasimodo looks back at Esmeralda. He signs, Crusader Kings tomorrow? She signs back.
I'll crush you. I love gamer Quasimodo.
Well, you think about it, like if you're stuck indoors all the time, you've been around, you've had nothing to do for 5 years except for train for combat and sit around. You're going to get really good at video games.
Hell yeah.
Quasimodo chuckles, then follows behind Frollo. Esmeralda once again drapes an arm across Phobos' chair. Once Frollo is out of earshot, Phobos says, I don't like the way he looks at you.
He can look at me all he wants. He knows if he touches me, I'll kill him, Archdeacon or not.
I wasn't talking about Frollo.
Who, Quasi? He's a friend.
Does he have a cute nickname for you too?
Well, he's not going to spell out Esmeralda every time he addresses me.
She presses the back of her hand against her chin and closes her fingers and thumbs inward. It's the letter E in both LSF and ASL. What's this sign for a hunchback? Esmeralda picks her weight up off of Phobos' chair and scoffs.
You know, your jealousy was cute at first. Now you're just being an asshole.
Esme, come on,
We've both got work to do.
Esmeralda walks off. Phobos shakes his head and laughs to himself in that way that assholes do when they think, against all evidence, that they've won an argument. Back at the house, Gwen's family arrives for a visit, and it's a warm reunion for folks who haven't seen each other in a while. There's her brother, Maddie, played by DeFerra Munatai, her uncle, Ray, Jimmy Dale Gilmore, and her mother, Jo, who is once again played by Cree Summer, including in the scenes that already also appear in A Native American Werewolf in Paris. That's right, you and I both flew actresses out there and shot multiple versions of the same scenes in a big, weird public tug of war for creative control of the dark universe that has had the Hollywood press fascinated all throughout production. Fans will try their damnedest to reconcile this issue by creating fan edits of one film or the other, trying to feature only their preferred Joe/Joy, only to avail, but to no avail, as each movie has at least one Gwen's mom scene that the other does not, so that no complete version of House of Frankenstein can be constructed without using both of them.
Love it. A perfectly clean solution to that problem.
After everyone's exchanged hugs and greetings, the whole gang sits down for a meal, and we pick up the dinner scene from A Native American Werewolf in Paris, right where it left off.
What is your background, Victor, if you don't mind my asking?
That's Uncle Ray. Gwen, who was already a little tense after Victor's faux pas about whether or not she knew her father, interjects. Come on, Uncle Ray.
What? I'm into genealogy lately. A consequence of my trade, breeding various strains and whatnot.
I'm from Switzerland. My family was once among the most renowned scholarly legacies in Geneva.
Maddie chimes in. Was? What happened? You get canceled? Maddie! What? A lot of people who get canceled end up in France, like Kevin Spacey.
That is true.
Victor looks very confused. Joe sighs and objects, but knows from experience that it won't do any good. Good Lord, can we get off this?
Woody Allen lives in Paris. So does Roman Polanski, but he was from here to begin with.
They love their sex pests here, dude.
I'm not much for broad ethnic stereotypes, but shit, Pepe Le Pew, they were onto something there.
Gwen is now fighting to stay mad and failing as she, Joe, and Cassie are all cracking up at Maddie and Uncle Ray's rapid-fire repartee. We take Victor's POV as his eyes scan around the perimeter of the dinner table, seeing Cassie and the Conlifts laugh. Eventually, the pan of this table transitions into a matching shot of the Frankensteins, Elizabeth, teenage Caroline, a preteen William, gathered around a long dinner table, smiling and laughing together. We keep spinning around the table over and over, faster and faster, and their laughter gradually becomes inconsolable weeping. Elizabeth begins to cough up blood. Caroline develops a massive black bruise on her cheek. William's face turns blue, and he reaches out towards us, asphyxiating. Back in the present, Victor rises from the table.
Please excuse me.
Gwen gestures to him apologetically. I'm sorry, Vic. We're getting a little carried away here. Please, sit down and have dessert. It's like the one kind of food they get right around here. More laughs from the table.
It's all right, Gwen. I'm just tired. Please, enjoy your time with your family.
There are a few more plaintive attempts to coax him to sit, and then some good nights as Victor slumps out of the room. Victor, Cassie, and the Conlifts spend the next day seeing the sights of Paris. As promised, here's a scene set at the Louvre where Victor is guiding the group through an exhibit of 18th century masters. Everyone is very impressed by the depth of his knowledge, even Maddie, who has zero interest in this shit. He lingers for a long time at some thematically resonant painting, and if I have time to run this idea past my artist wife, perhaps you can pick out something cool. I did not have time. And here's one of the few scenes that I cut.
Hey, wow, you summarized something.
Yes, here's where we have a cute scene between Victor and Joe that would have gone right here, where we learn that Joe is actually wise to the fact that Gwen is involved in some supernatural shenanigans, but is just kind of being polite and letting Gwen come to her in her own time.
Sure.
It's a nice little conversation about parenting.
Great. We love Joe/Joy.
Anyway.
She's a great mother. R.I.P.
Cut for time. You're welcome. The family is now on a boat tour of the Seine, floating past some various Parisian landmarks. When Notre Dame becomes visible in the distance, Maddie stands up and puts on his best tour guide voice. And coming up on your right, you'll see the world-famous Notre Dame Cathedral, home of the Fightin' Irish. Gwen riffs with him, asks Uncle Ray. That's right, Maddie. A lot of people don't know this, but the grounds of the cathedral are actually sovereign Irish soil.
Yeah, it's also the only church in the world where they take communion with Guinness and potato chips.
Joe ribs him gently. Not a fan of broad ethnic stereotypes, are we?
I'm just doing as the Parisians do, Joey.
An oblivious Victor to Cassie.
So many things changed while I was alone in the Arctic.
Cassie cracks up and decides she'll correct him later. Cut to a room full of monitors in Archdeacon Frollo's underground base. The attention of a nondescript agent is drawn towards a live security feed, where an alert has been triggered. He zooms in on a live video feed of a tourist boat floating near Notre Dame Cathedral. The computer highlights the face of one of the tourists, an exceptionally tall, broad-shouldered tourist traveling with 5 more conventional-looking companions. The agent mutters to himself in French, then into a microphone at his station.
I don't believe it. I need the captain and local surveillance ASAP.
Back to the family on the boat tour. Did they ever figure out what caused that fire?
Some sort of electrical problem, apparently? Can you imagine? A world-renowned landmark nearly burns down due to faulty wiring? Wouldn't have happened on my watch.
Ray, you were an electrician for about 3 weeks, 30 years ago.
Yeah, but I only stopped because the weed business was picking up. I retired undefeated, like Floyd Mayweather.
Victor turns to Gwen.
Your uncle is a very interesting man.
Back in the surveillance room, Phobos, Esmeralda, and Quasimodo gather around the reporting agent's monitor. Phobos and Esmeralda argue while Quasimodo stares a hole in the screen. This is insane. We're down here planning how to raid his house, and he shows up on our doorstep.
He's got his wolf with him. We could take them both right now.
It's broad daylight. We close in on Victor's face in the surveillance footage. He's smiling. Quasimodo's scowl deepens.
One of those things destroyed my family's entire encampment in broad daylight, a year before those new serums hit the street. We can't rule her out as a threat at any hour.
The unnamed agent speaks up.
We have orders not to engage her.
We are not engaging anyone in view of 1,000 tourists. If we're going to exploit this opportunity, we need a covert action plan in the next 10 minutes. Esmeralda looks away from the screen to where Quasimodo had been standing beside her and signs,
Quasi, what do you think?
but he's not there.
Just want to point out here that you have made it so that Esmeralda's family was at the Romani encampment in House of Dracula, which Gwen destroyed.
That's right.
Which is a nice connection. It also means that you think all Romani people know each other and are related to each other. So I guess problematic of you, Dylan, but sure, I guess. No, it's narratively clean. I like it.
Thank you. On the boat, Victor politely moves to the bow furthest from the cathedral, so as not to block tourist selfies with his massive frame. Cassie accompanies him, even though this means she can't see a fucking thing. It's fine. I live here. I can see it whenever.
Perhaps I could
If you
lift
finish
it?
that sentence, I will shove you overboard. Cut to an underwater shot, looking up at the boat and slowly rising closer to the surface. On the boat, Cassie squirms around, trying to find a gap where she can see anything aside from the passengers' backs. She blows out her breath. Fine. Fuck it, let's go.
Go where?
Pick me up.
Are you sure?
Let's not make it weirder than it is. We're underwater again, rushing more quickly towards the tour boat. Cassie settles onto her perch atop one of Victor's shoulders. It's actually a lot less undignified than she imagined. Less like a kid being carried by a parent, and more like Miss Elizabeth being carried by Macho Man Randy Savage.
Cassie's a wrestling fan.
The first of 3 wrestling references I put in the script.
I like Cassie as a wrestling fan. I buy it.
Well, no, that's me talking, not her.
But still, like it's
I actually
her POV.
think she would have a distaste for it, having grown up in the circus. I think it would remind her.
Yeah.
I think it would remind her of her upbringing, and she wouldn't like
it's
it.
distant enough because I was thinking, oh, she had a Brooklyn journalist boyfriend, so of course she knows wrestling.
Shout out to our friend Giovanni Colantonio.
I was gonna say, shout out you.
Also me. This doesn't suck, actually, especially since no one's looking this way. But let's not mention this to Gwen.
Certainly, Cassie.
Suddenly, a hand reaches up from over the side of the boat, grabs the back of Victor's jacket, and pulls hard. Victor and Cassie hurtle over the side and hit the water with a splash that goes unnoticed by the tourists above. Now we get an underwater fight between Victor and Quasimodo, who tumble end over end into the river's depths. This is a scrap between 2 burly guys who do not have to breathe to live.
True.
Victor has a considerable size advantage, but Quasimodo is a stronger swimmer and fights with years worth of pent-up rage. They sink to the riverbed, and this becomes an underwater ground-and-pound wrestling match. Cassie, of course, does have to breathe, and surfaces long enough to take a deep breath before diving back in to find Victor. She knows she'll be no help in the brawl, but she finds an empty wine bottle on the riverbed and gets an idea. She grabs it, swims up to the surface, and smashes it against the hull of a passing tour boat, turning it into a sharp weapon. She dives, searching the murky water until she finds Quasimodo straddling Victor's chest, raining haymakers onto his jaw. Above them, Cassie makes eye contact with Victor and drops the broken wine bottle. As Victor absorbs blow after blow, the bottle slowly drops into Victor's waiting hand, and he stabs it into Quasimodo's neck. Quasimodo recoils, giving Victor the window he needs to throw him off. Now Victor plunges the sharp end of the bottle into Quasimodo's foot. Quasi seethes and emits a strange, unearthly roar as dirty water passes through his larynx. Cassie tugs on Victor's jacket and points to the surface. She starts swimming upwards, and Victor follows. They look back down at their foe for a moment, and before he disappears into the murk, Quasimodo signs something that is not subtitled. Victor's eyes widen. Cassie and Victor pop up at the edge of a canal and pull themselves out of the water, soaking wet and exhausted. Who the hell was that? Victor doesn't answer. Just now, when he was looking at us, was that sign language?
It was.
Do you know what he said?
Yes. He said, "Hello, Father."
End of Act 1.
I knew you were going to pull that shit. I was going to talk about it in the act break where I was going to be like, I think I know what you're doing with Quasimodo,
the thing is
but I don't want to say it.
I couldn't delay it any further because it's too much of, I've teed it up too easily. I can't.
Sure.
So yes, that's there's the first glimpse of my take on Quasimodo.
Although, I guess I'm not sure whether it's Caroline or William.
All your answers are coming.
Yeah.
Anyway, give me your impressions. It's our first time stopping. We're an hour into the show.
Let's take a break. Let's take our
first. That's right. We're gonna have to take a break here because this is our break of part 1.
Of part 1, yes.
Good God.
Act 1 has taken us to an hour and 15 minutes.
It'll be shorter on your end because we'll have cut out all the times that I've sniffled and you've burped.
Yes, that's true. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we will discuss Act 1. We will get the first half of Act 2 and leave you on maybe a cliffhanger until next week. We will see you in just a moment.
What's up, Internet Bookworms? My name is Jason.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Bella.
And we are the hosts of the sci-fi fantasy book podcast, Shit We've Read.
What is Shit We've Read?
Well, Shit We've Read is where the three of us get together to talk about the shit we've just read.
But don't forget about our author conversations, too.
And we also have to mention our popular After Dark episodes where we get a little bit steamier with our good friend Emma Skies.
That's right. So if you're a fan of science fiction and fantasy,
or if you just love a good book discussion,
then you're in the right place.
Shit We've Read is available to listen to now wherever you get your podcasts or at shitwe'veread.com.
So follow us on social media at Shit We've Read for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to join the discussion.
And happy listening.
And we're back. We have just finished Act 1 of Dylan's The Hunchback of Notre Dame, Part 2 of the House of Frankenstein duology. And boy, there's a lot there. We said that after the Act 1 of Native American Werewolf. There's a lot going on here as well. And
we both did like really packed first acts.
Yes.
I think we had a lot of stuff that we wanted to explore, and we had a lot of stuff set up, and we inherited a lot of characters from the concept, right? So,
yes. Like you said, this is very much a sequel to Frankenstein, particularly the first one. Which I think is what people wanted from Bride and Frankenstein. At least the people that were upset about Bride and Frankenstein.
Yeah, and the people that's grown on people. I think I've been seeing at least on the Discord.
Yeah.
that on the second listen, once you know what to expect, people have been like a lot more. They've warmed to it, right?
You've plumbed the depths of the potential of the first one. Like you give us the scene where Victor kicks Caroline out, which is something that was not featured.
Well,
and maybe would have been if we were writing full scripts back in
that's
phase
the thing,
one.
Is that you did the first pitch before I ruined everything and wrote a script, right?
The first pitch for Frankenstein, I believe, was like 5 pages.
Yeah, but it's prose, so it was very like
it was denser. But
we didn't read back and forth for that when you read it front to back.
Yeah,
right. We didn't assign parts.
Mm-hmm.
It was early day weirdness. It was a different show for those first couple episodes, right?
They were only an hour long.
That instead of being a 2-part 4-hour extravaganza, that afforded me, because that outline is so much more vague, that allowed me to fill in a lot of gaps and add my own specifics.
Sure.
And I've tried my best not to directly contradict anything that you write
No,
there,
nothing's contradicted
and to
so far.
use as much of what's there as possible.
To remind people, in case you've forgotten, Victor's son, William, served as Caroline's assistant when she was bringing Victor back to life. And after Victor woke up as the monster, in a fit of rage, he killed his son, William, which is why he has these flashbacks of strangling William as in his monster form.
Now, here's the thing. I had forgotten that happened.
Yeah, you texted me about it. You forgot William existed, right?
Yes. This was one of the very many pivots that I took while making this script. There were 3 completely different ideas about who the Hunchback was as I was writing, and different ideas about like what Esmeralda's deal was. Is like the Court of Miracles as a concept was a late in the relative sense, right?
Yeah.
There was a version of this first act that had no Frollo. And I'm like, fuck, I got to introduce Frollo. Completely different cold open.
Mm-hmm.
This first act took me about 2 weeks. Acts 2 and 3 were written front to back in about 48 hours. The last 48 hours as of ending with when I got off your couch.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, I'm really happy with it, although we'll see as we read back through it. Maybe I'll decide it sucks, because I have not gotten to rewrite very much other than the constant rewriting I was doing throughout the process.
Right. I just as, you were saying you really liked my characterization of Gwen, I'm really loving your characterization of Victor. I think you're getting at sort of the complexity of his trauma that he has from being both the tormentor of his family and their father and monster and child and everything. We're really getting to explore that more. And I think, even though you're not dwelling on Cassie and Victor's relationship, I think we are getting to see them more enjoying each other's company, and we get to see Victor's gentleness, which I think is originally what sort of draws Cassie to him in the wake of Bride and Frankenstein is that he is trying to be a good person and has that gentleness and that he's trying to be better, and he really is sweet and romantic and gentle until something goes wrong, and then he's not sure how to handle it. And so, like, I can see the sort of that complex relationship thing where you see the good in someone and yet also know where they come up short.
Well, I mean, the thing I want to do with this a little bit is I get a little bit frustrated sometimes, and I understand it's part of the fantasy. And like, I don't think that like Captain America would be better if he was like a racist and a homophobe, right? I love Steve Rogers, like the MCU Steve Rogers as we get him. He's an important character to me in terms of on the scale of comic book characters on screen, right? But there is a certain frustrating naivety or stubbornness about like we do these period pieces sometimes, and we want these characters to live up to the idea like they have to. This is a protagonist, and this is how protagonist behaves now, and so we have to file down all the edges. And depending on the story, it's a good idea. Like Doctor Who does that shit sometimes, where they're like, we don't want to make every time travel story about race. Like if the Doctor is a person of color or as a companion is a person of color, we don't want to spend the first 20 minutes of every story in the past dealing with the race of it all. Let's just ignore it and have a good time. That's totally fine.
Yeah.
And this is a guy who is a Regency era rich man, European, right? And there are certain things about that are still romantic and nice to us. There is a degree of chivalry. He's well read. He's well spoken. He's classy in a lot of ways. But you know how you're less bigoted than your parents, who I'm sure are like awesome people? How about you crank that up by 12 generations?
Yeah.
You would, especially like, if you're a judgmental leftist like we are, who can't have a conversation with most people without pointing out why they're problematic and should die.
And you are going to be canceled for this, and I will kill you.
You would judge that person so harshly, right? And I think, there's the school of thought that says you can't judge people by the standards of a different time period. But when you're watching the story now, when you watch a movie from what we watched recently, we watched The Mad Ghoul, right? And everyone is so condescending towards the female characters constantly.
Yeah.
That's just normal. It's just how guys acted. You can judge them by the standard of that time, being like, oh, they're being gentlemanly. You can be like, how about let her finish a sentence?
Yeah.
How about don't say there's no shadows when there's a shadow because she's just being hysterical, right?
That is a specific thing in The Mad Ghoul, if you haven't seen it.
An abusive sort of manipulative father by our standards today would be incredibly tame by the standards of 1820.
Sure.
And I wanted to kind of acknowledge how much a person would have to change from being accepted then to being accepted now.
Yeah. And I think it's working. It's coming across very well. I think we should keep moving. I don't want to save... I think I'll save most of my reactions for episode 2 because we'll have less script to get through in episode 2. But I really like what you're doing with Victor. I really like seeing the other side of the story that I told, because really this is taking place along the same timeline so far, although your Act 1 stops a little short of my Act 1.
Yeah, they don't line up exactly, and there's a place
which
where
is fine.
Where I fudge the timeline a little bit. I do a little bit. I think a little bit of an Empire Strikes Back thing, where I think more stuff happens in your story than it could possibly have happened in my story.
Yeah,
but if we were producing these, or when we produce these, I just did a big wink for
wink,
Dalton.
wink, parody.
We would have time. We would have time to do a rewrite of the two of them to make them line up a little bit more better. If they have to, you might not find what I've done objectionable at all.
We'll find out. I
mean, you might hate it.
Mine basically takes place over the span of a month because it's full moon to full moon.
Yes. So mine, I think, is maybe a little bit longer. I think it could work.
Okay. Well, let's just keep moving and get through the first half of Act 2. And then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. And then we'll see you next week for the rest of the story. But let's keep moving.
Act 2, 1825, Geneva, Switzerland. Under a thunderstorm, a horse-drawn carriage pulls up to the gates of Castle Frankenstein. A footman peers into the carriage window, and a flash of lightning illuminates the face of Caroline, now a full adult, dressed all in black. The servant bows his head and backs away. He opens the gates, and the carriage rolls in. Just outside the main entrance to the castle proper, Caroline embraces a young man. This is William, now in his late teens and still portrayed by Daniel Durant.
Ah.
Daniel Durant is 35, but fuck it. This is the guy I want.
Yeah.
They hug for a while.
This is the girl.
Yeah. They hug for a while, tears streaming down each of their faces. They finally separate, and William signs to Caroline, which is subtitled. I'm so sorry. I couldn't risk seeing you. He threatened to disinherit me. Caroline signs back. She struggles a bit, out of practice. She speaks aloud along with her signing.
It's not your fault.
Do you want to see them?
Yes.
William leads Caroline inside and into a room that resembles a chapel. At the end of an aisle, there are 2 open coffins, facing each other. Caroline approaches slowly. She steels herself and then looks down at her dead mother's face. She can't help herself. She breaks down and cries.
This is the easiest job Angelina Jolie's ever had.
Yeah, it's
Easy
ridiculous.
paycheck.
I didn't recast her because I'm trying not to,
Sure,
except for,
of
of course, when I'm fighting with you. But yeah. William rushes to her side. The camera pans over to show that Victor lies dead in the other coffin. Caroline and William couldn't care less. Cut to the siblings sitting at a big, lonely dining room table. Caroline sips tea, trying to steady herself. William signs to her. I got some of your letters. Claudio used to sneak them to me when he could.
You never wrote back.
I'm sorry. I was afraid. Caroline looks down into her tea. William knocks the table for her attention. Your work. Have you had any success?
Some. But the results have been...
She searches for a word she knows how to sign.
Ugly.
William and Caroline look at each other for a moment. They don't always need sign to communicate. William continues. You know what I'm going to ask you.
Yes.
Will you do it?
No.
There's a pause. William sinks into his seat. Caroline thinks for a moment, then signs to him.
Not until we've tested the procedure. On him.
There's a thundercrack and we find ourselves back in the present, in the corridors of the Court of Miracles HQ. A sopping wet Quasimodo storms down the hall, on his feet this time, arriving at his quarters and slamming the door behind him. He takes heaving breaths in the dark for a moment, then flicks on the light. Sitting at his tall desk chair is Archdeacon Frollo. Frollo signs.
Explain yourself.
I'm sorry. I didn't think. I was so angry.
You could have been hurt. You could have been seen.
We can't have that, can we? Frollo stands up, now shouting as he signs emphatically.
No, we cannot.
Frollo softens, takes a breath.
I know that it's difficult for you, but it's the cost of our safety. The Court of Miracles has remained a secret for centuries. If you were to be exposed, we could all be exposed, and all of this, our home, could be taken away. You could be taken away. I cannot allow that.
He gets to be out there. He gets to be seen. Quasimodo fights tears. I'm hidden away in here, and he's out there living his life as if nothing happened. He breaks down. He has a family. He has a family again. Don't they know who he is? Don't they know what he's done? Frollo embraces Quasimodo, who sobs in his arms. We see water running down Victor's stony face, then pull back to see that he is sitting in a hotel shower, clutching his knees. Out in the bedroom, Cassie drops her wet cell phone into a bowl of uncooked rice that's sitting on a room service tray.
I just realized, given the dynamic you've set up now between Victor and the Hunchback, I can't wait to see who is in the bathroom.
You'll find out.
I have no idea now who is in the bathroom.
You'll find out.
Because I set that up to be the Hunchback, but this is a very different dynamic.
I ended up wanting to do that.
Yeah.
I've actually thrown a couple swerves at the stuff that you gave me.
Good. That's what makes it fun.
When the towel-clad Victor steps out into the hotel room, Cassie is vigorously drying her hair. I've got most of the smell out, thank God. I don't care what this room ends up costing us. There was no way I was going to set foot in our house reeking of the Seine. Victor says nothing. He sits on the edge of one of the room's twin beds, facing away from Cassie. She sighs and sits next to him. Please tell me what you're thinking. No response. He called you father. You seem like he might be the same kind of creature that you are. Do you think he meant it figuratively?
No, I do not.
Was that William?
Yes.
Cassie sits with this for a moment. So, what do you think happened? Maybe Caroline brought him back the same way she reanimated you?
That seems likely.
And now I suppose he's out for revenge. Victor looks at Cassie. You know, for Caroline. You said they were close. She brought you back to punish you for disowning her. Maybe she brought him back to punish you too. No answer from Victor. She's about to say something when her cell phone rattles in the rice bowl. Oh, thank God it's working again. Gwen must be going crazy. She reaches for the bowl, and Victor grabs her hand.
Please wait.
Cassie sees the despair in Victor's eyes and does as he asks.
I don't want Gwen to know about this. It's as you said, she has a lot on her mind.
Cassie nods. They sit quietly until the phone stops buzzing and the call goes to voicemail. I'll send her a text so she knows we're okay. No details. I sent our clothes down to the laundry. We can head home as soon as they're dry, okay? Victor lays back on the bed. Cassie lays beside him and rests her head on his chest. Do you want to go looking for him?
No. When he's ready, he will find me.
We're back in Geneva in 1825. We're in the laboratory in the highest tower of Castle Frankenstein, the ruins of which we saw back in The Bride and Frankenstein. Now, of course, the walls and ceiling are intact, and the lab equipment, all futuristic for its day, is running off stored electricity from the thunderstorm raging outside. On a cold metal table attached to steel pulleys lies the deceased Victor Frankenstein, not yet enlarged or stitched up the way we've come to know him. He's simply a dead human being with no modifications other than a pair of electrodes attached to his neck. Caroline covers his face with a white sheet. The wind howls, and the equipment pops and whirs. The sound is overwhelming, so it's convenient that Caroline and William don't have to speak aloud to communicate. Caroline signs.
It's time. Raise us up.
William nods and grabs hold of a large wheel and pulls, raising the operating table and surrounding platform up through a window in the ceiling, and with it, Caroline and Victor. Above, the table makes contact with a lightning rod, and Caroline, clad in a heavy coat and thick protective goggles, adjusts her instruments. Below, William stands waiting, both hands on the wheel. Above, lightning strikes the tower, and Caroline stumbles, nearly falling off the platform. She raises her goggles off her eyes.
No!
Victor's body has caught fire. She pats down the burning sheet that lays over him, trying to snuff out the blaze.
William!
She cries out reflexively, then remembers to tug on the pulley she set up to get her brother's attention below. William sees her signal and lowers the platform, which is still smoking by the time it settles to the floor. Caroline stomps away from the body and throws her gloves on the ground. Now alone with the body, William approaches it and pulls the sheet off of Victor's face. His skin is charred and burned. William sinks to the floor and cries.
Where is he now?
In the corridors of the Court of Miracles.
I've given Frollo about 5 different voices. I can never remember
so long
from
as you
scene
can
to
tell
scene.
where he is.
And probably 4 different accents.
Yeah, I'm trying to be consistent with Phobos. My French accent is not very good, but I'm trying to keep it consistent.
If you ever can't recognize what voice I'm doing, it's probably Frollo.
All right, let's start the scene again.
Where is he now?
In the corridors of the Court of Miracles, Frollo, Phobos, and Esmeralda walk and talk. In his quarters, sulking. I can't have him skipping morning briefings, Eminence. My men already feel like he gets special treatment, and it's a blow to morale.
I should talk to him. Respectfully, Eminence, I don't think he's going to benefit from a reprimand. What he needs now is a friend. Then I suppose I'll leave it to you. I'd bet you always know what a man needs. Wouldn't you, Captain Phobos?
Yes, Your Eminence. Esmeralda grits her teeth and stops walking, allowing the men to leave her behind. Now to Quasimodo's room, where, as Phobos guessed, he sits in the dark at his computer, crushing some poor soul at Tekken. A green light flashes over his door. He ignores it and continues his game. It flashes again. He keeps playing. Then, a Discord pop-up notification appears in the corner of his screen from Emerald Empress. It reads, knock, knock.
Can we get Quasimodo in our Discord?
Yeah, join the stream.
Send him an invite.
We'll give you a free subscription. Quasimodo opens his door, and Esmeralda is behind it with a backpack and a large bag of Haribo sour gummies, which are very popular in France. She throws the snacks at him. He sighs, happy to see her, but annoyed that she's interrupted his brooding. She signs.
You need a change of scenery.
Quasimodo and Esmeralda take an elevator ride. We haven't done this in a while.
We won't get many more chances. They're nearly ready to reopen.
We cut to the inside of the unlit, unoccupied Notre Dame de Paris. A beautiful fresco splits open, revealing a hidden elevator door. Quasi and Esmeralda step out. They walk through the beautiful empty church, then up a stone stairway until they arrive in its legendary bell tower, the South Tower, which houses the 2 large bells, including Emmanuel, which was cast in 1686 and weighs 13,000 kilograms. Little Notre Dame fact. Esmeralda opens
Notre Dame fact.
No, it's the home of the Fighting Irish. Esmeralda opens her backpack and retrieves a laptop, 2 controllers, and a rolled-up rug to sit on. She sets them out on the floor and gestures, voila.
Name the game. Anything but Tekken.
Quasimodo looks around at the stunning old-world surroundings. I'll be right back. Cut to a bit later as Quasimodo sets up a chessboard on the rug between himself and Esmeralda.
Never mentioned playing chess.
I haven't in years.
That's good, because I haven't either.
They start to play, signing in between moves. Do you ever miss your family?
All the time. We text a lot, and I send them most of my paychecks, so they sort of have to talk to me. They weren't very happy about me leaving, especially so soon after the attack, but I had to do something, you know?
But they don't know what you do.
No. They think I'm a dancer.
Quasimodo chuckles.
You don't think I can dance?
I didn't say anything. Esmeralda gets up and offers Quasimodo a hand. He looks up. What?
We're going to dance now.
Music's not exactly my thing, Esme.
Then you should love dancing. It's like music, but without sound. Come on.
She offers her hand again, and he takes it. She pulls him towards her and leads him around the bell tower, and, against the backdrop of the beautiful Paris sunset, they dance to a silence broken only by their laughter. Elsewhere in the base, Frollo and Phobos enter a secure storage area. They walk up to a freight elevator. Phobos pushes the down button. They chat while they wait for the lift.
Do you think Agent Aprea can get Quasimodo back on course?
She'll turn him around. Frankly, sir, he's got puppy dog eyes for her. Poor bastard.
You don't think my son is good enough for fair Esmeralda?
That's not what I said, sir.
At ease, Captain. I know about the two of you. And where my son is concerned, I acknowledge that there's always room for improvement.
The lift arrives and the doors open. Frollo steps inside. Phobos remains where he is, standing guard. What's on the agenda for today, sir? More electrolysis?
No. Today we're moving on to programming.
Have you chosen your code word yet?
Yes. Sanctuary.
The door is closed.
Good way to justify Yeah, okay.
We jump ahead now to Gwen tearfully seeing her family off in a cab to the airport. If we want to be real bastards here, we can have a little cameo from Rebecca Ferguson as June, posing as a cabbie, loading their bags into the car.
I think we absolutely should.
Right?
We absolutely should.
Victor watches Gwen hold her mother tight.
Although it would spoil one if you saw them in the wrong order.
Yeah, that's the thing, is I'd like them to be things where you could watch them in either order, but
yeah.
Joe, Maddie, and Uncle Ray get into the cab. Before they drive away, Joe makes eye contact with Victor, silently reinforcing the promise between them that I cut. So that shot will also get cut.
Great.
Joe really gets the short shrift, having her only scene cut from this script. And I flew out Cree Summer and everything.
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
LMI tail feathers really coming out on top here.
After the car drives away, Gwen turns around and takes Cassie's hand. Remember, Gwen, you're not a prisoner here. Gwen just nods and gives Cassie a hug. Cassie squeezes her back tightly. Gwen then hugs Victor, but Victor doesn't hug back. He just stands stiffly. Gwen notices and pulls away, looking confused. Victor can't meet her eyes. He just stares down into the side of her. Vic, what's going on? Victor pulls away.
I would like to get back to my needlepoint. Would anyone like some coffee?
Cassie also stares with a what the hell, Vic kind of look. Gwen pulls away toward the street. I'm going to go for a walk.
I do want to point out, so you cut earlier the repeating the dinner scene. Because we obviously don't want to repeat a lot of scenes.
But this
and stuff.
should be in both movies.
Well, I actually think in maybe the movie version, I think the dinner scene actually is pretty pivotal because that's where we know now that Victor is dealing with these fatherhood questions about William and Caroline and stuff. And the crux of that dinner scene is that now he sees, oh, Gwen doesn't have a father. Now I have a third person to be a father. Like,
okay,
I feel like
we could leave the whole thing. Here, when I was working on the script, I wanted to include this scene. There's also another scene that I don't have here that I definitely want to have, and just for economy's sake.
Yeah, I think for economy's sake, we don't have to repeat the dinner scene. But I do think I think it ties very much into the story you're telling with Victor and would actually be appropriate. Well, I guess it depends on how much of Victor and Gwen are going to be in this movie. But
there will be some. Victor goes inside without another word. Cassie looks at Gwen apologetically and chases after him. Inside, Victor is in the living room, settling into his massive easy chair with his needlepoint kit. In the adjoining kitchen, Cassie pours herself a cup of coffee. If you're not going to share what's going on with Gwen, then you're going to have to get better at hiding it. Victor looks up, acknowledges her, then focuses on his craft. A few hours after this, by the way, is when the other scene from Native American Werewolf in Paris takes place, in which Victor explains to Gwen that he's not ready to be her father, but I don't think we necessarily need it in the movie. We talked about it. Sure. We can leave it in. Yeah. It's good. It's actually probably good. It just, I think it distracts a little bit from the William of it all, because if I were to use that scene word for word, it pivots everything to Caroline, which maybe he would do because he's trying not to talk about the William thing.
Of it all.
Yeah. So anyway.
And it has to do, I think the two are just complementing each other nice, so it doesn't matter.
Let's say it's there.
It fits.
We've got to let some time pass here just to stay lockstep with the timeline established with Native American Werewolf. I think we also need to do something to establish for the audience that Gwen is taking the serum that stops her from wolfing out under the full moon, and that maybe they usually have her locked up in the basement for those 3 nights out of the month, especially since it's about to become relevant.
Okay. Maybe we can include that talk she has with Cassie or something about the serums or...
Yeah, but I think that we have to... I thought about writing a separate scene, but I figured that was something that I actually could spare the audience this time.
Yes,
or really you. The audience likes when we go long. It's just a lot more work for mostly you.
But the audience knows what's going on with Gwen. Hopefully, if you listened to 2 episodes ago.
Back at the Court of Miracles, Esmeralda shows Frollo, Phobos, and Quasimodo a surveillance feed of the outside of our hero's house. It's nighttime, and Gwen is walking out the front door. Esmeralda freeze frames and points her out. Then another live monitor where the full moon can be seen in the sky.
What's wrong with this picture?
Quasimodo signs. She's not a wolf. Do we have bad intel?
The intel's good. She's nerfed.
Frollo raises an eyebrow.
Nerfed?
Quasimodo chuckles and signs. She's taken that new drug that keeps werewolves from transforming under a full moon.
We don't need another scene. The scene does it.
Okay, but I feel like I was bothered by the idea that we could watch this movie and be like, yeah, what does she usually do? They're not... Anyway, it doesn't matter.
This scene covers it.
Moving on.
Why are we still talking about werewolves? I thought I made myself clear on this.
New Frollo voice, by the way.
10 different Frollo voices.
You're going to have to be consistent. It's going to be confusing for the audience. A lot of characters. Please try to do something resembling the same voice for Frollo.
I'm trying. I don't remember what I did. Was it deeper? I don't want to confuse it for Victor. Why are we still talking about werewolves?
That's too much now.
Fuck.
5-hour episode. Okay, just... This is Frollo talking now.
Yes. Why are we still talking about werewolves? I thought I made myself clear on this. We'd assumed that this week would be the most dangerous time to go after Frankenstein since he'd have a giant killer wolf in his basement. But the drug that Conliff's taking doesn't just prevent transformation, it actually suppresses the strength and invulnerability that werewolves have in human form.
Usually.
In almost all cases. Eminence, the time to hit Frankenstein is right now.
Frollo pauses, then turns to Quasimodo and signs.
Are you ready?
Quasimodo nods grimly.
Timeline question.
Yeah.
You said time had to pass. But it's a full moon now.
Okay, well then, fuck it. I misread your script.
Yeah, the full moon happened. The night that she has that conversation with Victor, she takes the serum because the next night is a full moon.
Okay, this is the next night then.
Okay.
Until, flashback to 1825. William and Caroline are studying Victor's charred remains on an operating table. They sign to each other as usual.
The tissue damage is too extensive. Most of it is no longer usable.
Then that's it then? There's no bringing him back?
I didn't say that. In science, no experiment is a failure. We've learned a lot from this. I can swap out the damaged parts for fresh ones, preferably larger ones that are more likely to survive the electric charge, and then we can try again.
And if that fails, we replace more of him?
Exactly.
At what point does he stop being our father and become something else?
The sooner, the better.
William shoots her a pained look.
What? Do you really want him back the way he was?
He's our father.
He would have changed you if he could. He was ashamed of us both, the errant daughter and the invalid son.
You didn't know him like I did.
No, I knew him better. You don't understand him. The worst thing he ever did to you was ignore you. He tore me apart. He tried to make me hate who I am. And when my work is finished, if there's even a sliver of Victor Frankenstein left in that body, I'm going to make it pay for what he did to me.
Caroline storms away from the operating table, leaving William alone once again with the corpse of his father. In the present day, Victor brushes his teeth. He spits blood and pus into the sink and then studies his sewn-up face in the mirror. The mirror shakes. Victor raises an eyebrow. It shakes again. There's a sound coming from above. From the roof, maybe? Victor cautiously approaches the frosted bathroom window and is just about to open it when Quasimodo comes crashing through it, boots first, catching Victor right in the jaw. Downstairs in the living room, Cassie is writing on her laptop when she hears the sound of shattering glass. She looks up, startled, but her mouth is immediately covered by a gloved hand. In the bathroom, a knockdown, drag-out battle is being fought between Victor and Quasimodo. Quasimodo smashes Victor's head against the tile wall, then kicks him through a glass shower door. Victor gets up, palms Quasimodo's head, and slams it through the porcelain toilet bowl. Fixtures are breaking, pipes are bursting, water, spit, and blood is spraying everywhere.
So Victor didn't lie when he said a pipe burst.
No, he didn't. In these tight confines, Victor is simply too big to fight effectively, whereas Quasimodo is all agility. When there's no room to maneuver on the floor, he kicks up onto walls. He puts Victor into a headlock and delivers a tornado DDT. Quasi roars and drops an axe kick on his downed opponent, and we cut in a flashback to 1825. Another wild thunderstorm. Caroline and William are making another attempt to resurrect Victor, who is wrapped head to toe in bandages. William looks up at the operating platform as he raises it through the porthole in the ceiling. Rain is spilling in from above, splashing his face. Above, Caroline waits impatiently for the heavens to provide the power she needs. She roars at the sky, challenging God to strike at her. He accepts her challenge. The lightning rod catches a white-hot bolt, which surges through Victor's body. In the present, Victor looks up from the floor as Quasimodo unsheathes a long, sharp metal syringe from his belt and tries to stab it into his eye. Victor blocks with his forearm, just barely keeping the tip from blinding or killing him. Downstairs, Cassie struggles against 3 masked figures who wrestle her to the ground and slap handcuffs behind her back. She cries out, "Victor!" Victor hears this, gets a knee between himself and Quasimodo and drives him back. He flails for the door. Quasimodo dives on him. In the laboratory, William and Caroline quickly tear layers of bandages off of Victor's body, which lies still on the operating table. Pieces of his patched-together skin become visible. His face is revealed, stitches, staples, and all. His eyes are open, but Caroline realizes that while the lights might be on, no one's home. His head turns to Caroline, but there's no expression, no life there. Caroline grabs Victor's face with one hand. She speaks to him.
Come on. Look at me, you revolting bastard. You disgusting thing. Wake up and look at what you've become. Look at what I made you.
William can't hear what she's saying, but senses her rage. He waves for her attention, but she won't look.
Wake up!
Caroline winds back and slaps Victor hard on the face. In extreme close-up, we see a tiny spark of violet light. Victor's fists clench, his eyes focus, his brow furrows. William leans over him. He says aloud, "Father?" Victor roars. He sits up. His arms burst through the remaining bandages. Caroline falls backwards, but William puts his hands out, trying to calm him. Victor grabs at William's neck and wraps both of his massive hands around his throat. From William's point of view, we stare into Victor's hateful eyes. In the bathroom, Victor rolls over on top of Quasimodo and starts strangling him, squeezing as if he's going to twist his head off. We look down at Quasimodo from Victor's point of view and start intercutting between Victor now, Victor then, Quasimodo and William. As if he is experiencing these flashes himself, Victor screams and releases Quasimodo, stumbling back from him until he falls against the opposite wall. Quasimodo sits up, looks across at his father, shocked. Victor signs to him.
I'm sorry.
Quasimodo doesn't move.
We must talk.
Quasimodo is hyperventilating, a purely psychological response for a man who doesn't have to breathe. Victor sits up and reaches a hand towards him. Quasimodo recoils. After a moment's hesitation, Quasimodo taps a device on his wrist. Downstairs, the masked officers drag a squirming Cassie towards the front door until their own wrist devices glow red. They look at each other, then swiftly uncuff Cassie, throw her to the floor, and rush out the door, leaving it open. Upstairs, Victor crawls towards Quasimodo, offering his hand. Quasimodo swats it away, then dives forward over Victor. He tumbles towards the window and then flings himself out of it. By the time Victor gets his head out the window to look, there's no sign of him. The syringe is still on the bathroom floor. Quasimodo lands hard on the roof of an anonymous black van and then swings in through the open back door. In the back, Phobos, Esmeralda, and the nondescript third guy stow their gear, frustrated as the van starts moving. Phobos shoves Quasimodo. "What the hell is that, man?" Esmeralda gets between them.
Cool off, Phobos.
She takes a breath and signs to Quasi.
What happened?
Quasimodo hesitates. "We need to reassess the situation." Esmeralda interprets for Phobos, who throws a fit. "Reassess? We had a mission. It's not for us to decide what our objectives should be. We are soldiers of God. We have orders and we carry them out." Esmeralda signs to Quasimodo.
This is going to be hard to justify to the Archdeacon.
Quasimodo sinks into a seat. He's having a hard enough time justifying it to himself. Back at the house, Victor lumbers down the stairs. Cassie runs to him. "Victor, are you all right?"
Yes. Were you hurt?
"Nothing worse than the bumps I used to take in the circus. What happened? Why did they just leave?"
I begged his forgiveness.
"For disowning Caroline?" Victor hesitates. Then, finally,
No. For murdering him.
in 1825, the crazed Victor lifts William up by the throat and slams him over and over into the operating table. With every impact, more of his bones crack and pop through his skin. Victor throws William against the wall and he crumples like a rag doll. Caroline screams and Victor leaps out a window into the night. And that's where we're going to leave you for 7 days.
I do have some questions, though.
Okay.
So are we going to get a voice in the bathroom?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
We will return to the bathroom.
We are going to go back to the bathroom.
This
okay.
film will have 2+ bathroom scenes.
Okay, because I was going to say, obviously it doesn't matter, but there's a little bit of timeline wonkiness, but maybe not, depending on when the next bathroom scene happens, or when is the next time Gwen tries to use the bathroom.
We're going to get there very soon.
Okay, well,
I promise you the mumbling in the bathroom will be resolved.
And that is the cliffhanger.
That was the hardest one to figure out.
That is the cliffhanger we're leaving you on, audience. Yeah. You won't find out who the voice in the bathroom was until next week.
Yeah, because the whole thing about like Victor admitting that he murdered his son is a thing where like if you hadn't brought it up during the intermittent thing, I forgot about it. I kind of assumed that other listeners might have forgotten about it.
Oh, sorry, I spoiled it.
But that's okay because I did kind of telegraph it. Right?
Yeah. And it is canon.
It's canon. Like, it's the kind of thing where, like...
And we know we have listeners that have listened to this show, like, 4 times through.
And to me, the thing is, like, it's not so much about us finding out, because I figure that both longtime listeners and people who have been paying attention this time to the nature of the flashbacks and stuff like that, it's really more about Victor admitting it.
Yes.
So
and
that's
Cassie finding out.
And Cassie finding out, right?
And who was in the bathroom.
And also, we're going to find out who the fuck was in the bathroom.
And also, you know, this whole experiment, this House of Frankenstein thing was really a double-edged sword, because on the one hand, if I hadn't given you that outline, this would have been your third act.
Fuck you! Fuck you! Boo! Boo this person!
And we would just be saying the end, and we'd be going to the next movie. But
I hate you.
On the other side of that sword, instead you wrote an 80-page screenplay.
Yeah, and guess what? This is my biggest, baddest fucking third act ever coming up. You're all going to hear next week. It gets fucking rad. It's rad, Dalton.
We're going to get a Transformer Notre Dame.
In 7 days, you will all hear what I'm going to hear in the next hour and a half, which is Dalton's going to say, Dylan, that was a rad third act.
I'm going to say that was an amazing third act.
There's your fucking cliffhanger.
Yeah.
Dylan out.
I've roasted your ass 2 episodes in a row now. I need to take it easy, but you are giving me a lot of editing work, so I get to
I still
get
have
your
to
ass.
score this motherfucker.
True. No, but I really like what you're doing here, and I mean, this also is really serving as. This almost serves as like a requel to our requel, where it's like it is fleshing out the first movie, because that first movie was the most pitchiest of pitches, because it was our first episode. And now we're kind of going back and showing all the nuts and bolts. We've also kind of done the Spider-Man trilogy thing here, which is what I mean is back in that first Frankenstein episode, I said, in this movie, we will not see the creation of Victor, of Frankenstein's monster, because it feels like a Spider-Man thing. We don't have to see him getting bit by the spider. We don't have to see the Uncle Ben dying.
Right. And
we
then
know,
in Spider-Man
No Way Home. In No Way Home, they give him an Uncle Ben moment.
Yeah.
And now here in our third movie, we are showing the creation of Victor.
That was not deliberate. I wasn't thinking about that. I was thinking more about the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans, because I think about them in terms of tone.
Yes.
And now this hadn't occurred to me, but in the Sam Raimi Spider-Man 3, they revisit the Uncle Ben story, and you find out that there's more to it than you thought there was, which is what I've done, but this was a coincidence.
Yeah, I think it actually works better.
I was thinking way more about Spider-Man 2 when I made this.
To save the creation of Victor until the third movie, because now we know Victor better, and all this stuff is hitting harder.
Yeah, and so much thematically about this movie is, and we're going to get so much more into this specifically in the second part, it has to do with the nature of judging a person and of forgiveness, because it's all context.
Yeah.
It is very difficult when you're very close to somebody to see that person the way that people who knew them differently see them, right? We know Victor. We like Victor. Victor has done horrible things.
Yes.
And if you knew him then, or if they happened to you, you would be aghast at the fact that we talk about how it would be cute if he was Santa Claus. It would make you mad.
Well, I'm glad this movie is addressing that, because in addition to the Cassie thing, that's really the other thing. Like, we really had a movie where he ripped off Jake Johnson's head.
Yeah.
And by the end of it was a good guy.
Yes.
And we have glossed over, the first Frankenstein is a gnarly movie where I started my tradition of killing children on this show.
Yeah. And then the next one, he starts to get kind of cute.
Yeah, and then all of a
then
sudden
by
he's
fucking
cute
the mummy's
and
hand,
dumb
he's
and
super cute.
Yeah.
So I want to address this. Like, people do change. And it's like, if someone enters your life in a certain place in their lives, that's the person you know. But that person has baggage. That's a different person to somebody else. What happens when somebody who knew them when enters your life and has to be like, do you really know this person? And the answer is really like, really neither of you do, unless you know them both.
The thing about Victor is that he used to be a piece of shit. And in Tim Robinson voice, Quasimodo thinks that people can't change. But Victor used to eat sloppy steaks at Trofino's. He had his hair slicked back, lived for New Year's Eve. But anyway.
Here's the thing to do in between these episodes is go watch I Think You Should Leave.
I'm sure most of our listeners have watched it.
All right, we're about to hit the 2-hour mark on our half an episode.
Yes, so I'm glad we're splitting this one up. It feels weird to leave it at this point, but we've got a lot to still cover. Thank you for being patient with us with this massive Hunchback of Notre Dame. This will not be an ongoing thing in Phase 3, right, Dylan?
No, it's not going to be an ongoing thing. It's not going to happen again.
Until Dark Legion,
but that's on purpose.
Yes.
And the thing is, Dalton, whenever I scale up the work, you tend to follow me. Don't follow me here.
I am not. I literally don't have time.
Okay. Good.
Love whenever I've got my hands full with the music. But anyway, we will be back 1 week from today with part 2 of The Hunchback of Notre Dame. We will find out who was in the bathroom.
You're really stuck on this.
Go ahead. I expect everyone to be in the Discord guessing who's in the bathroom. This is the first time we've had the Discord be able to
in the middle of an episode.
In the middle of an episode, be able to guess at
That's
things.
not true. Didn't we have that for the Mummy's
Legion.
Hand?
Yeah, we got that for Dark Legion. Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess that's not true at all.
Yeah. Big fucking liar.
Yep. But we will see you all in 7 days. And until then,
stay afraid of the dark universe.